Hello and welcome to GFM at the Young Person Show, hosted by Future Me Gloucestershire. It has only been a month since we've been in the studio, but I think I can speak for everyone when I say that we've missed it. My name is Beth, and I'll soon introduce you to the show, today's topic, and the guests in the studio today. Now, tomorrow is International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and so at Future Me, we thought it would be fitting to dedicate some time to this topic. So today in the studio, I'm joined by fellow youth reps Maria and Aiden, as well as Ben. Say hi, guys.
Hiya, Hi there.
Just first off, I was wondering whether you guys could give yourself a quick introduction. So Maria, starting with you.
Well, I have two stepbrothers with disabilities, so that's why I'm here.
Aiden?
So I have personal experience myself with having both mental health and physical health disabilities.
And Ben?
Hey everyone, I'm Ben. I've got experience with a hidden disability in the form of epilepsy.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here today, and we'll get to talking to Maria, Aiden and Ben more in a little bit. That was Attention by Tiwa Savage. Now, as said previously, tomorrow is International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and as well as this, it is currently Disability History Month. Now, first things first, I just wanted to ask the guests in the studio today, in your opinion, why are awareness events like these so important? So starting with Aiden?
They're really important because they help to bring awareness for people who are abled and might not have experience with people who are disabled. They don't ever think about disability and how that can affect individuals who are disabled. So having these sort of international days and events just allows to bring that awareness and inclusivity as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think you'll agree, Maria.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's still a lot of stigma surrounding disabilities, and it's always good to have things like that, bring back the focus to things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think, that's why these events are so important, is just to kind of bring a light and a degree of focus and kind of almost just to start a conversation too, because I feel like it's a conversation that's still quite rare to be had, unfortunately, but there is a lot to talk about and a lot of changes that need to happen. I think you'll agree
definitely.
With, there's still a lot of stigma, and this year's topic for International Day of Persons with Disabilities is fighting for rights in a post-COVID era. So I wanted to ask, did you notice any challenges or barriers exacerbated or introduced by the COVID-19 pandemic, Aiden?
Where to start, really? Obviously, this is just from my personal experience. Every disabled person's experience differs massively. But from my experience, trying to contact like the doctors and things like that was made so much more difficult. And for me as well, so the transition to doing phone calls and Zoom interview appointments and things like that was not accessible for me, because I have a lot of anxiety around that, and because I'm autistic as well, I couldn't get what I needed to get across in that environment. So it just wasn't accessible for me. And when it came to school at college, I had to shield, so I wasn't able to attend college classes. So I actually ended up failing that year, and I'm now currently redoing that year, which has put me back, obviously. And yeah, so it has been quite difficult. And still even now, there is a real scare around still getting it type of thing, and it kind of feels like I've just been pushed back out into the world when I had to shield for a year and a half, and then just very quickly shoved back into going back to work and college and expected it to be completely normal.
Yeah, exactly. So. Especially when in a lot of cases, you know, we can see now not much has changed since kind of this time last year.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that being really worrying and anxiety inducing. And as someone who isn't disabled, you know, I can relate kind of to those challenges too. So I can't imagine what it was like for people who needed that kind of even more. What do you have to say, Maria?
Exactly. Yeah, no, obviously it was difficult to be in lockdown and come out of lockdown for everyone, but I think especially for parents with children with disabilities and those people with disabilities, you know, it must have been really hard. For example, my stepbrother with disabilities, he has autism and blindness, and it was quite hard because he's used to having a routine, and it can be really distressing to disturb that. So he lives in assisted living, and when we had to go into lockdown, he had to come back home with us for a long time. So my stepdad had to take care of him and spend so much time taking care of him, and obviously having to manage that and work as well. It was quite. It was really hard for.
I can imagine
everyone.
that being really difficult.
Yeah,
I mean, for both people involved, and it must have been really negative on. Yeah, for example, mental health.
Yeah. For example, an activity that he likes doing a lot is going to Slimbridge because he really likes to hear the birds and say their names. And because of lockdown, we couldn't go to Slimbridge, and it was hard to explain it to him. But he understood why. But for example, also seeing his grandparents, he couldn't see them for a long time, and that is one of the little things that he can get enjoyment out of because of his disabilities. And it was really difficult and distressing for him.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it. I think one of the things that the pandemic and the lockdowns really did was kind of really shine a light on the inaccessibilities in our world, and how much we kind of don't really think about them, because obviously the lockdown was introduced so quickly and quite, you know, blatantly without much warning, and you suddenly had all of these measures in place without any kind of warning or massive lead up to them. I can imagine that being really kind of difficult to manage and kind of try and work out what that kind of means for you now. So, you know, thank you both for sharing, and that was really kind of insightful to listen to. We're going to take a quick break now before discussing this topic more. Welcome back. Now, if you've just joined us today, I'm joined by Maria, Aiden and Ben in the studio, and we've been discussing disabilities because it's the International Day of Persons with Disabilities tomorrow. So now, I was wondering whether you guys would be willing to share a bit more about your personal experience. So, starting with Aiden, what kind of stigma or discrimination have you experienced or seen?
So there's quite a lot, really. I mean, so all of my conditions and stuff, all sorts stuff like that, are all invisible. People don't see them when faced with me. So there have been a lot of situations where people don't know how to interact with me properly and end up doing something that does trigger me, or doesn't help me in any way. And even when I try to explain, because I don't look, and I say that in bracket, I can't parentheses, I don't look disabled. They just go, oh no, you're not, just deal with it, type of thing. And it's so strange to me. And I've experienced this from just strangers on the street to in educational settings to even my placement of work. And there is definitely a huge stigma around disabilities and the way that in which people deal with disabled people.
Yeah, I think, you know, I definitely agree. There's been this, you know, for some reason people have a look in their mind of what disabled is, and if, you know, you don't fit that look, then to them you aren't disabled and you won't be offered the same kind of courtesies, I guess.
Even after saying like you are disabled, or like I wear the sunflower lanyard, and like I don't know.
People, you even have a visual element.
I was gonna say I have a visual element that tries to illustrate that I am disabled, yet people still either don't know about it or just decide to ignore it.
Yeah, that must be, really quite difficult to deal with. What about you, Marie? Obviously, you've got family that are disabled. Have you noticed any kind of stigmas or, that they've faced?
Everyone that deals with my stepbrothers or has met them has been really friendly to them. We've never had a really bad experience with anyone directly to us. But obviously, I think it's worth to remark that disabled people, for example, my stepbrother that I have here in England, they're still people. So some people just don't address them, don't talk to them, but they do. For example, my stepbrother has a really severe case of autism and blindness, so he likes being acknowledged and he likes being talked to, and there's things that he likes. So if you talk to him and ask him, what did you have to eat today, he will gladly answer you, and he likes hugs and he likes to be acknowledged. And some people, I feel like people are scared to interact with some disabled people. Whereas obviously with me, people just assume I'm not disabled for whatever reason. But then your brother, like, people recognise that he's disabled and are therefore too scared to talk to him. No, we have... He is a person. He has thoughts, feelings, hobbies, just as everyone else does. Well, we have got, like... Obviously, people in the supermarket or in the street, things like that, children give looks, parents shush them, things like that. But it's not, for my stepdad and my stepmom, they, it's not relevant anymore. You can just ignore it. But, you appreciate when people just treat them
treat you the same as anybody
people.
Else.
Yeah,
exactly. I can imagine, I feel like this is a conversation that's been had for so long. You think we'd finally be at the point where we can just recognise people as people, and for some reason we aren't really there yet. So, kind of, Aiden, how would you say that those stigmas and discriminations that you faced has impacted you? Well, I mean, it is very difficult in every setting, really. I mean, when I use like the disabled bathroom, for example, and I've had people come up to me and shout at me for using the disabled bathroom because apparently I shouldn't be using it, even though I am within my right to use it, and it's important for me to have access to the disabled bathrooms. And also things like being exempt from wearing the mask as the face covering as well. I've had dirty looks of people like questioning why I'm not wearing a face covering when I can't. And with my autism, I sometimes tend to come across very bluntly, I suppose, which can sometimes come across as rude, but that is never my intention. But when people don't recognise that I'm autistic, they therefore think I am being rude to them and start arguing with me, which is really upsetting. So yeah, exactly. Would you say that it's kind of knocks your confidence more with kind of interacting with people? Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, there are cases where I do just try to keep to myself because I don't want to have to go through that effort of potentially starting an argument. I mean, I recently had a problem at work with my employer where my manager started having a go at me for coming across as rude, apparently, even though I have told them that that's just kind of how I act, and that wasn't my intention. And as my employer, they should should know to be inclusive. And so now I'm like terrified of talking and doing anything at work at the moment. That must be really isolating. Yeah, definitely. We've been living in an isolated world for so long. It's just now you're out and about, it's kind of even more on top of that, and it must be really kind of confidence knocking. So with this conversation that we've had, would you say that kind of stigma around people with disabilities is still quite prevalent?
Definitely, without doubt.
Yeah. What about you, Maria? Would you say that in your experience you think that there's still a lot of stigma around?
Yeah, I think there is, although when it's really severe, like my brother's case or my other stepbrother's case that he has Down syndrome, when you are around a community that supports you and understands, for example, for parents with children with disabilities, they understand the struggle that they've been through and all of that, it gets easier to have a support network around you.
And there's definitely kind of more of those growing kind of thing. So would you say that it's and getting better? But
I think people, when they understand, they can learn.
I was going to say, following on from that, a lot of the stigma comes from ignorance, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's simply just people's lack of understanding of how to interact and how to communicate with disabled individuals. So and because they don't understand, they therefore they therefore take it out and
exactly. So that kind of leads me on to the next point, where what advice would you give people who aren't disabled?
So I mean, following on from what I just said, I think people just need to take the time to learn,
to listen,
to listen and to learn. And if you encounter a disabled person, then ask them how best to interact. Like for me, I can't have people raising their voice at me because that would trigger me. So if somebody asks me, I will happily tell them, because I'm not gonna get offended if you have a question, and because I understand that you are learning, and this is how best you will learn how to be better and be more inclusive.
So it's just kind of about kind of really trying to understand and ask questions and create these conversations like we're doing today, really.
Exactly.
And trying to encourage that, because with this stigma, there is this weird, for some reason people don't talk about it or feel like they can't talk about it, or that bringing it up is rude, or when in reality, because everybody with disabilities, they're all individuals, they're all going to have different things that help them and don't help them, and trigger them and don't trigger them. And the only way you can kind of learn that and cater to those people is by asking and kind of being mindful, So maybe
I do feel like people need to be mindful as well with what they are asking.
Yeah.
So
not rude.
Questions are great to ask, but there are some questions that I get asked which are completely inappropriate at times. I mean, like, for example, somebody will be like, one thing that I know of is some disabled people will get asked, like, oh, how do they have sex and things like that, which is completely inappropriate.
Them.
Exactly.
You wouldn't ask that to somebody who isn't disabled.
Exactly.
You don't have to answer those
just
things.
Things like that are not appropriate to ask, whereas questions that are like meaningful and it is because you just want to learn.
For example, when little kids give stares or go, oh look mummy, oh look that person, normally the parents try to do their best by shushing them and going, shh, you're not
allowed to ask about it.
It's not something that should be talked about, kind of thing. People treat it like that, but it's completely alright to tell your children, well, in some cases, why don't you go and say hi and ask that man,
or just
that person,
rather than try and shush them and try and kind of educate them and create a conversation around it,
because they're just making it invisible, like it's not there, like, oh, let's just pretend it's not a thing.
I think this is why,
when it is.
I think this is why people tend to get scared of talking to disabled people, because growing up you get told, because kids ask questions, so that is how
They learn.
children learn.
Yeah, exactly.
So when they're told to shush and pretend it doesn't exist,
they learn
then
it's a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. So then you find fully grown adults that feel uncomfortable to be around and look at and talk to disabled people.
Yeah,
definitely.
Agree.
I think, like I've said so many times in these shows before, we really need to start having more and more of these conversations around these topics, because for some reason we have certain things in our society that we just don't really talk about and we just kind of treat as a taboo. So because of that, what kind of advice would you give other young people who are disabled?
I mean, just keep going, I suppose. Be determined. You are who you are, and you can't change that. And if somebody isn't treating you how you need to be treated, type of thing, like if you have additional needs, then you need to put them across and tell people that they need to support you. And if they aren't willing to do that, then
it's not your fault.
Yeah, it's not your fault, and you can push them out of your life if they're not willing to meet your needs.
Yeah, exactly. It's on other people to, try and listen and be mindful and stuff. And if they don't, that's not on you. And at least, you kind of tried in that sense, and to kind of not live in fear to speak up, I suppose.
Yeah. And I mean, definitely in situations as well where legal matters may come in as well, just keep pushing through it, kind of thing. Like if your employer isn't respecting your disability and meeting your needs, then bring it up with higher management and stuff like that. And
exactly. I think it needs to be brought up, it needs to be talked about, and not to be kind of afraid to speak up and say those things, really. I think we're all in agreement here. That's where we are. So I just want to say, thank you both for sharing your experience, and as I've said many times, I think these conversations are really, really important to have. And it was great to listen to you guys' experiences, and it's really important that we sit down and we listen to other people's experiences. Now, as discrimination against disabled people is such a large and important topic, as we've just kind of realised and heard now with the conversations that we've just had, at Future Me we decided that it would be really important to dedicate another young person's show to hidden and invisible disabilities, of which we know is a big issue when it comes to discrimination. So this show will be happening next week on the 9th of December, so make sure to tune in and listen, as I'm sure it will be another really interesting discussion. And I believe we also have an interview there with a school nurse about disabilities and things like that too. So for now, I would like to direct your attention to Ben and direct people's attention to the local offer, which he will tell you a bit about now.
Yeah, cheers, Beth. So I think this is something that people will be talking about a little more in the next episode. But the local offer is basically a new online directory that offers information, signposting, news to kind of individuals and parents of people with disabilities or who are not in education or who have EHCPs, all in kind of one place. And it's actually a site that we will be hosting some Future Me stuff on at some point in the near future. So
if there's not, another reason to check it out, there's a reason there too.
Yeah. So there's plenty of reasons to check it out, and I'm new to it myself, but from what I can tell, it's an incredibly valuable resource, and it's got a lot of good stuff on it.
Yeah, so I've had a bit of a look through it too, and it seems that it could be, a really helpful resource to, young people in general, but especially young people with disabilities and additional needs. So if you are one of those young people who kind of, want to get out there and take a look at what's around in Gloucestershire, definitely take a look at that website, which you can find on www.glossfamilies.org.uk/kb5/glossfamilies/home.page. A bit of a long website there, but I'm sure if you search the local offer or the Gloss Families directory, you will be able to find it. So unfortunately, that is it for today's show. I just wanted to ask you guys if you've got any final words or if you'd like to say goodbye. Does nobody want to say goodbye?
It's lovely being here once again. Great to hear you guys.
Doesn't sound it.
Yeah, thank you for having us and listening. It was great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I'm very happy that I was here to put my input across and to hopefully bring awareness to just a few more people in this world.
Amazing.
Well, yeah, it's definitely, a really important conversation to be had. And like they say, I'm really glad that I was here to kind of listen and harbour this conversation so we can, start talking about these things more.